Chapter 151, Dark Castle 1. In fact, I was most worried about Yu Jonghyuk. He was more trustworthy than anyone else here, but at the same time, I couldn't be sure of his position. If Yu Jonghyuk shook off my hand, then my actions would be useless. Fortunately, Yu Jonghyuk was calm. He might have a violent temper, but this guy was amazingly good at controlling his anger and sent me a secret message. "What are you doing?" The character Yu Jonghyuk has activated Midday Tryst. The item that I had previously bought belatedly came to my mind. I didn't know that the Midday Tryst I registered at that time would still be valid. I deliberately spoke in a brazen manner. "I will do this more than once or twice. You should get used to it." "What? Conditions aren't bad enough for you. I know that you can't inherit the stories of other constellations." Yu Jonghyuk flinched at my words. "I don't know how you know such things." In fact, declaring a nebula with me wasn't bad for Yu Jonghyuk. In the progression of the original novel, Yu Jonghyuk didn't inherit any stories here. It was due to the constraints on Yu Jonghyuk. The regression constraints. He could turn back the clock after dying, but he couldn't inherit the stories of other constellations. Incarnation Yu Jonghyuk. Is Incarnation Kim Dokcha correct? Are the two of you making a nebula? The Dakibai host, watching the situation, stepped in. Everyone looked at Yu Jonghyuk while I nervously waited for his answer. "Yes." I inwardly sighed with relief. The first hurdle was overcome. However, the real hurdles were from now on. In the complete silence, someone on the second floor laughed. The soft laugh was somewhat pleasant. I could feel Persephone's mood through this laughter. "Kim Dokcha, you did it after all. This is why I like you." Of course she liked me. Persephone's style fit this type of story. Thanks to her laughter, the other constellations also started to laugh. Most of them were constellations on the second floor. Unfortunately, their laughter didn't contain the same meaning as Persephone. The nebula Vedas is disappointed in you. The nebula Gyak despises you. Uriel held a handkerchief to her mouth and frowned at the reactions of the constellations around her. "What? Why are you like this? This is good." The constellations on the first floor watched silently. Their eyes contained a mixture of longing and worry. Maritime war god and bald general of justice also looked nervous. The one who was most interested was Goryeo's first sword, who was looking this way. The laughter died down, and more direct contempt flew from the second floor. A person who hasn't climbed to the throne of a constellation wants to create a nebula. Dakibai, does this make sense? Can any cat or dog open a nebula? The Dakibai seemed confused at all the questions that poured towards him. That Incarnation Kim Dokcha has clearly received recognition from the star stream. Along with these words, the stories I've made were projected onto the ceiling screen. King of a kingless world. The first scene that appeared was when I destroyed the absolute throne by borrowing the power of the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. Strictly speaking, my narrative started from there. Fragments of the throne appeared on the screen. Some constellations nodded like they were convinced, and some constellations looked at each other with astonishment. He broke the throne of divinity. Did he really open with that story? There were probably some attendees who didn't know my information. I thought I was quite famous, but I was still lacking. I suddenly looked around and saw the Russian child staring at me with blank eyes. He who opposes the miracle. The second story was when I took down the returnee, Myung Ilsing, who was a disaster. Some constellations are favorable towards you. Since the returnees were disliked by constellations, then this was a suitable story to acquire the liking of the constellations. At this time, curious expressions appeared on the faces of the constellations. "What is this?" It was due to the third story that appeared, where I beat up the intermediate Dakibai Paul. I was a bit surprised when I saw the screen. I only wanted revenge for Shin Yusung. Was it included in my stories? The Dakibai Paul screamed, and the embarrassed Dakibai host quickly fast-forwarded. Then the complaints of the constellations were heard. "Hey, what is that?" "That, haha, it seems to be the wrong data." However, unlike the Dakibai's words, a story name appeared on the screen. One who showed contempt for a streamer. Laughter was heard from the landing of the stairs. It was Goryeo's first sword who was laughing. This is crazy, ha. Then the fourth story appeared. One who hunted the king of disasters. It was when I hunted the shadow of the constellation Yamata no Orachi in Peaceland. The constellations' mouths dropped open when they saw Orachi killed with my electrification. The shadow of a narrative-grade constellation. He has already accumulated 4 legendary stories. Confusion spread among the constellations. The screen turned off and the Dakibai continued speaking. In any case, Incarnation Kim Dokja is now at the facing the throne of a constellation. If he gains his 5th story through this occasion. Those who knew I was aiming to be a constellation weren't confused, but the other constellations were startled. Becoming a constellation before the 10th scenario is over. He is a new constellation. I suddenly received a lot of heated gazes. Certainly, this was a formidable event even in ways of survival. There were only a few constellations or returnees who had gained the recognition of the star stream before the 10th scenario. In the midst of the increasingly confused atmosphere, it was Manu of Vedas who opened his mouth. I will acknowledge Incarnation Kim Dokja. However, I can't acknowledge the nebula. There are 2 problems. The constellations focused on Manu's voice. 1. We don't know if Incarnation Kim Dokja has sufficient payment ability. Isn't it necessary to have the minimum of funds before establishing a nebula? The coins are sufficient. Turmoil occurred again at my words. Manu stared at me with suspicious eyes. We will know once it is checked. The second problem is who will support your nebula. I gulped. It was finally the real challenge. The establishment of a nebula needs to be supported by at least 5 constellations. Do you have the support of any constellation? That I couldn't easily answer, and Manu laughed. No, is there even a name for the nebula in the first place? I opened my mouth as I glanced at Yu Jonghyuk. The name of our nebula is Kim Dokja's Company. There isn't a name yet. In addition, we will gain the supporters now. Yu Jonghyuk casually interrupted me. Are there any constellations who want to support our nebula? No one responded to Yu Jonghyuk's words. Manu laughed. I knew it. It is a waste of time. Dakibai, continue with the story succession. At this time, someone raised their hand. The Olympus underworld will support your nebula. Queen, the angry Manu growled at Persephone. Persephone's aura rose sharply. It is my decision. Are there any complaints? Urg. No matter the strength of Vedas, the constellation Manu couldn't stand alone against Persephone, queen of the underworld. In the end, he turned towards the other constellations. Surely there won't be anyone else. I will support it. The voice came from the 2nd floor, and the constellations were once again amazed. It was the great sage, the equal of heaven. Prisoner of the golden headband. Really, are you serious? I towards him in gratitude. The great sage, the equal of heaven, was picking at his ears while looking down here like it was troublesome. I don't know, sorry, I also support it. Uriel of Eden declared her support. I will also give you the name for your nebula. The nebula name is forbidden. Oof oof. The 9th rank angels around her were flabbergasted and covered her mouth. No matter her intentions, I was thankful. Now the rest of the constellations glanced at each other. The 3 constellations who declared their support were powerful enough not to worry about others. The rest were different. It was unusual for upper-grade and narrative-grade constellations to challenge Manu just to help establish a new nebula. I looked to the side and saw that Yu Jonghyuk had half given up. He messaged me. Is up to here. I would be blocked here, but I didn't mind. So okay, my objective was achieved. What? I wasn't expecting anything. The important thing was to buy some time. From the beginning, I didn't intend to inherit the story of any constellation here. I thought of the original novel, and the banquet's ending was fixed. At this time, something unusual happened. Goryeo's first sword, will support your nebula. Goryeo's first sword declared support for us. Then the upper-grade constellation stood up at once. Then I, Maritime War God. The bald general of justice won't stay still. Once the constellations on the first floor started to support us, the constellations on the second floor and the Dakibai became greatly confused. Wait a minute. Such a random declaration of support. The next moment, the constellation Secretive Plotter will support your nebula. Secretive Plotter, where the hell was he? You have won a provisional nebula creation ticket. Don't tell me. At this moment the banquet hall started to shake and the space distorted. I looked up at the sky. The banquet had finally ended. They had come. This aura is... Everyone retreat. Even the constellations became nervous. The sky was greatly distorted and powerful sparks appeared. It was like the sky was splitting apart. The Great Hall. The unknown hall, which only appeared when a scenario was activated, suddenly appeared above the banquet hall. The startled Manu shouted, "The gods of the other world, how did you dare come here?" The constellations roared and raised their own aura. Then a terrible voice came from the hall in the sky. "Why weren't we invited?" Persephone and Uriel instantly blocked my ears and Yu Jonghyuk's ears. It was to prevent the foreign true voice from intruding. They stood in front of us, lowering the pressure from the hall. "I'm sorry, but the party is over. It's time to go back." "Then I'll see you next time." The moment Persephone and Uriel spoke, Yu Jonghyuk and I were surrounded by a transparent circle. It was the space transformation using the power of the constellations. They wanted to save us from the terrible battle that would soon take place at the banquet hall. By the way, the god of another world was a bit faster than expected. Wait. The gods of another world are looking at you. The gods of another world are looking at you. At the last moment, I heard Uriel scream, "Kim Dokja." Then darkness covered my eyes. "Who are you?" Not recorded in the vehicle. Don't tell me. The last story is finally about to start. Hey, is it here? It is okay. What if those guys come? It is said that the maritime admiral and pure steel often come here. Isn't this the hero's grave? A dark night. Several robbers were gathered around the tombstone erected in Gwanghwamun. The leader of the robbers, Li Dampa, frowned at the terrified people. Pathetic fools. What hero is he? Can a hero die so easily? It wasn't long ago that Li Dampa learned about the existence of the hero, the strongest man who saved Seoul by sacrificing his life. Of course, Li Dampa didn't believe the rumors. Now do it quickly. There is no time before those dark scum come out. Many people were already participating in the 9th scenario, Dark Castle. However, not all people participated in the scenario, including Li Dampa. The main scenarios were just festivals for the smart guys like him. It is a hero's grave. Wouldn't there be one or two good things buried? Search the body as well. He might have hidden things on his body. Shit, he is buried deep. Hey, pick it up. The robbers quickly dug at the ground. Approximately 2 hours passed. We reached it. Finally, their shovels hit a lid. Their hearts were pounding as they opened the lid. A man dressed in a white coat was sleeping in the coffin. Li Dampa laughed. A hero, bah, he is a sleeping princess, he is ugly. The coat is excellent, strip it off him. Tag. Wayala. What Quack. The shocked Li Dampa fell down and started shaking. The hero, who had just been dead, was holding onto the shoulder of a robber. Then every being in Seoul heard the following message. Someone has acquired 5 stories. A new constellation is born in Seoul's night sky. Chapter 152, Dark Castle 2. It had been 5 days since they entered the first floor of the Dark Castle. Li Jihai ran down a corridor of the Dark Castle with the injured Li Gilyung on her back and Shin Yusung. The 5th grade demon species, Dark Tracker, is chasing you. Jump! Li Jihai avoided the scythe that appeared from the Dark Tracker and used demon slaying. Magic power scattered through the air as Li Jihai took the children and ran with all her strength. Damn, taming doesn't work on them. I can only tame monster species. Damn, Li Jihai kept cursing as she ran. There were roughly 10 demon species following her. The 5th-grade demon species were stronger than other monster species. Her skills weren't enough and she couldn't use her stigma in this environment. I shouldn't have come in. After Kim Dokja's death, the morale of Kim Dokja's party was completely disturbed. They lost focus and started acting individually. To make matters worse, Yu Jonghyuk mysteriously went missing while the 9th scenario, Dark Castle, appeared. The Dakibai had told them when the scenario first started. This scenario, haha, maybe you'll fail. Li Jihai's reaction had been disbelief. They were going to fail. The scenarios always seemed impossible, but they always won. Thus, they could do well this time. At least, that's what Li Jihai had thought. Go right now, smash all these scum. She didn't know why she had been so hasty. Maybe it was because of guilt, rather than confidence. She felt guilt for someone's death and pushed herself to the limit to wipe out the monsters. Maybe it wasn't just Li Jihai. Yong Hee-won, Lee Hyun-sung and the other members felt a similar sense of urgency. Thus, they prematurely rushed to the scenario area to get rid of their insecurities. After all, they were the strongest rankers in Seoul and the strongest incarnations. However, Li Jihai soon realized that it was a mistake. Shit, this is ridiculous. Li Jihai's power didn't work in Dark Castle. The trajectory of Kendo, which reached level 7, rarely hit, and the power of demon slaying only provoked the demons. Her sword had broken a long time ago. Jihai Uni. Li Jihai moved at Shin Yusung's cry, and she avoided a dark tracker's blade. She picked up a weapon dropped by an incarnation, and used sword training and ghost walk. Uni, behind you. Dark liquid from the dark trackers scattered through the air. Li Gilyoung's small insects came from somewhere and were hit by the liquid instead of Li Jihai. The insects hit by the black liquid experienced bizarre cell deformation and exploded. Thanks to the time bought by the insects, Li Jihai was able to deal a bit more damage to the dark trackers. The armor around the neck of a dark tracker broke and it fled. However, there were still 9 remaining. Besides, the dark trackers were just a joke. The really scary thing was the guy on the other side of the dark trackers. Demon Viscount Naslok. He had a human body with a rhinoceros head. Li Jihai's body shook every time he approached. She had never seen such a monster before. In terms of individual strength, he wasn't as strong as the flood of disasters. If the disaster of floods had her power suppressed, the demons had no such thing. Moreover, Li Jihai's higher strength had become a poison to her. She knew the opponent's strength and this only raised her fear. Li Jihai raised the blade and bit her lips. Thus, here. On the first floor of the Dark Castle, the ancient magic power barrier has been formed. Uni, over there. A blue room was created at the end of the hallway. It was the only resting place in this dark castle. Li Jihai and the children rushed to the room with all their might and barely escaped from the pursuit of the dark trackers. It was a small space that was less than 2 square meters, but the 3 of them barely managed to fit in. You have entered the ancient magic power barrier. The special barrier will be activated for 30 minutes. If it wasn't for this safe zone being activated 3 times a day, Li Jihai and the children might have been killed already. The dark trackers groaned as they touched the barrier and retreated. They tried to enter several times before giving up. However, that guy was different. Why isn't he leaving? The demon, resembling a rhinoceros. The demon Viscount Naslok sat on the Gorund a few meters away, as if it knew the principles of this barrier. It is waiting. The demon's long tongue swept over his lips. Like a gourmet waiting for delicious food, he watched Li Jihai and Shin Yusung. Shin Yusung shivered at those terrible eyes. Now what? There are no more monsters to summon. There are still 30 minutes, let me think. At the edge of the barrier, Li Jihai was able to see the outside world through the windows of the castle. They couldn't leave through the window because of a special enchantment, but they could see the outside anyway. Demon species poured from the entrance of Dark Castle that Li Jihai and her companions had opened. More of them were lesser demons, but they were too much for ordinary incarnations. The demons of Dark Castle devoured and infected the incarnations of Soul. Thanks to this, many of the demon species outside the fortress were people she originally knew. Min Jiwon and the Hwarang, the members of Nirvana's Salvation Church. The people she knew were walking down the streets and tearing people apart. All of this was the result of her impatience. If she had been a bit more careful. Didn't I tell you? The difficulty of this scenario is on a completely different dimension. Li Jihai heard the voice of the Dakibai in the air and realized. It wasn't because she was strong that she could survive until now. It was because she was lucky. Damn, foolish girl, she blamed her own impatience too late. The people who entered without preparation scattered in the maze of darkness and she met these children. What happened to the other party members? She didn't know. Maybe they were all dead. If only Master was here. No, not Master. I wish Dr. Hyung. Li Giliung's voice was heard from behind her, and Li Jihai frowned. Don't speak useless things, fool. You are hurt, so go to sleep. Li Giliung, who was hit in the back of the head, fell silent again, but unfortunately, there was one other person. Ajasi isn't dead. I don't know why, but I feel that way. She didn't know why these children kept on bringing up a dead person. That person is in hell. Quickly forget that ugly face. Shin Yusung showed an unexpected response to her harsh words. I really don't understand. Everyone says he is ugly, but how is he ugly? The question was a bit embarrassing. In the meantime, she had pushed Kim Dokja is ugly like a slogan. The constellations sometimes gave her coins, and she never really questioned why Kim Dokja was ugly. I mean, the shape of his eyes and nose, the whole harmony. The more she talked, the most confused Li Jihai became. She couldn't understand where Kim Dokja was ugly. No, Kim Dokja's face didn't come out clearly. It was as if it was obscured by something hazy. Or like a face that hadn't been created yet. Why couldn't his face appear clearly? Li Jihai told Shin Yusung, it just isn't to my taste. You cried so much at the funeral. I was acting, you idiot. The constellations gave me a lot of coins at the time. Some constellations asked Li Jihai if it was really acting. Li Jihai bit her lips. Uni is still a long way off. People aren't all about faces. You really? Li Jihai watched Shin Yusung for a moment and sighed. I know that much. She spoke in a small voice. Just because she knew it didn't mean she could admit it, at least for Li Jihai, who was still immature. She owed a lot to Kim Dokja. She survived because of him. She knew it well, but she didn't want to admit it. She wanted to repay her debt while still looking good. In fact, he was a pretty helpful person. Now that opportunity had vanished forever. There is 1 minute left for the duration of the ancient magic power barrier. Li Jihai came to her senses as the darkness in front of the barrier shook. The demon's smile widened. Li Jihai realized it was time. Yusung, can you pull Giliung up? Take him away at my signal. Listen to me. It wasn't appropriate to sacrifice her life for a friend to live. Even so, she wanted to live like this. It was because of the teachings of the dead. Quickly, run away and ask someone for help. Do it before I go to hell. Understood, hang in there, Uni. Perhaps there wouldn't be anyone else. Still, she had to say this. Otherwise, the child wouldn't leave. Li Jihai rushed forward the moment the barrier disappeared. The surprised demon jumped, but that was it. The demon species surrounding her aimed for her body. Blood flowed from her white thighs and arms. If only there was a lake nearby. No, if only she could get in touch with her sponsor, whose link had been disconnected a few days ago. I don't want to die. The trajectory of Kendo was gradually disturbed and she weakened. The demon's smile became bigger. There was a big hit to the back of her head and her vision shook for a moment. Li Jihai muttered to herself, I want to live. It seemed that something similar happened before. What had happened at the time? At this moment, light appeared in front of her. The bodies of the dark trackers were split into two. It was as if the Messiah had descended and waves were splitting in two. Li Jihai watched in a spellbound manner. The confused demon Viscount Noslok turned his head, and a powerful electric current appeared around it. There was a man in the path of light created by the electric current. Li Jihai stuttered, but she couldn't make a sound. He was the one whose face she couldn't remember. He was saying something, but she couldn't hear it. The next moment, the fog covering his face disappeared. The demon Viscount roared angrily. For what, she didn't know. However, one thing was certain. This time, the man's face was visible. Odyssey, is this your face? The constellation, who doesn't yet have a name, is looking at you. Li Jihai listened to the message and smiled as she fell forward. Chapter 153, Dark Castle 3. I generally do 2 chapters a day, not always. There will be a day without chapters. Stop freaking out when there is no chapter. Rainbow Turtle. Were the words earlier referring to Odyssey? What? A new constellation in Seoul, blah blah blah. Ah well, that's right. I smiled bitterly while staring at the demons around. I was surprised to see Li Jihai's crisis, but it seemed she had been acting too aggressively. Demon Viscount Noslok. This insidious guy who resembled a rhino was a demon who ripped apart and killed countless incarnations. I knocked down a noble-grade demon at once and realized how strong I had become. Li Jihai saw his collapsed body and muttered, "This guy was incredibly strong. How strong are you after becoming a constellation?" I didn't defeat him using my own strength. I borrowed the power of another story. Another story? Who are you? I looked over at Noslok, who was still breathing. Wait a minute. I simple stepped down and destroyed Noslok's head. You have defeated a noble of the demon world. 10,000 coins have been acquired. The item Advanced Demon's Proof has been acquired. The subspecies of the demon world will be afraid of you. Originally, killing a demon servant would gain the attention of their demon king, but this scenario was different. All demons in the Dark Castle scenario were ones waiting for their new master. A few constellations are amazed by your overwhelming presence. A considerable number of constellations are questioning your probability. Certainly, the probability was questionable. My strength was currently at a level that violated the balance of the scenario. However, it wasn't because I was a constellation that I could easily get rid of Noslok. The story Messiah's Path is partially in effect. It was the absolute divinity effect of Messiah's Path. I borrowed the story, which had a special effect on demons, from Eden. The Nebula Eden is asking you to pay the story quotation. I drew a cross shape in the air and heard a message. The Nebula Eden is delighted with your narrative quotation. It was annoying to do this quotation every time, but it was better than plagiarism. Furthermore, I didn't have to pay any other price for using it at this time. It was a special service that the Eden Nebula provided. The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is pleased. This was all thanks to the cute Uriel. Fortunately, the banquet was well resolved. Ajasi, have you become religious? Li Jihai laughed while breathing roughly. Her right shoulder and abdomen had stab wounds. I'm sorry. Doesn't the 10th strongest person in Seoul look poor? Now is your hardest time. Don't worry. You will be better in the future. Stay still. I'm going to fix your dislocated bone now. I thought I should use the Elaine Forest essence. However, I had no items remaining in my coat subspace. I had left it to Han Soo-young before dying. Just before dying in the 8th scenario, I made a small contract with Han Soo-young and left my items with her. Then, there was only one way left. Dokibai bag. As soon as I opened my mouth, I saw the screen window of the Dokibai bag in front of me. Some constellations are questioning the use of your natural privileges. Until now, most constellations didn't know I enjoyed the benefits of the Dokibai bag because Bihyung would turn on the advertising. Now there was no need to hide it because I was a constellation. I immediately purchased the Elaine Forest essence and fed it to Li Jihai. Eat and sleep. Thank you, Ajasi. Well, thank you for crying for me at the funeral. I will faint now, so don't talk to me. Li Jihai fell asleep. I lifted up Li Jihai and heard a familiar voice from behind me. Ajasi. I was filled with a warm sensation. I could tell the owner of the voice without looking back. Your incarnation is looking at you. I wouldn't have been able to run straight here if it wasn't for this feeling. I saw Shin Yusung crying and thought that parents probably felt like this. Ajasi. I grabbed Shin Yusung and lightly embraced her. Was I late? You are 1 week late. 1 week, damn, I was resurrected later than planned. Let's go, I have to find the items I entrusted to someone else. A week has passed, why haven't you come yet? Han Soo-young lay on the floor of Dark Castle and murmured to herself. It was crazy to act like this in the Dark Castle, seething with demon servants. Fortunately, no demon servants came after hearing her voice. It was because someone had already swept away the nearby demon servants while moving upstairs. Of course, it was all done by Yu Jonghyuk. Damn protagonist jerk. Han Soo-young gritted her teeth. 30 minutes ago, Han Soo-young had confronted Yu Jonghyuk here. Then she was disastrously defeated. Her body ached and her head was dizzy. The demon species, they weren't the problem. The real demon was Yu Jonghyuk. You scammer, how could you use such a person, Kim Dokja? She couldn't understand it, no matter how much she thought. In the Seoul rankings, Yu Jonghyuk was ranked 3rd and Han Soo-young was 4th. Then why was the difference so large? The reason she didn't lose her life was because of her last-ditch words. Hey, these are Kim Dokja's items. Are you going to steal them? Why did Kim Dokja leave his things to you? That isn't it because I am the most trustworthy person. Then I will kill you and take them. Why you want to kill me? What will Kim Dokja think? Yu Jonghyuk thought about it for a while before finally letting her go. If you mention him in front of me again, I really will kill you. Then he headed up to the 2nd floor. Han Soo-young was furious when she thought about it and screamed. That jerk, abyssal black flame dragon, didn't you say you are the strongest constellation? Why can't I beat him? The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is in deep thought. The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, says that it isn't his fault. Han Soo-young sighed. It was a scene where she would be misunderstood as having multiple personalities. This is a big deal. That jerk brought his little sister up. It is a development that Kim Dokja will clearly hate. The situation is like this, but where is Kim Dokja? The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is asking about what you mean. You're a bastard. By the way, that jerk took all my proofs, and I will have to start from scratch. Han Soo-young opened the scenario window. Main Scenario 9, Demon's Proof. Category Main. Difficulty level A++. Clear conditions. Hunt the demon species, collect 9 demons proof and place them on the altar on the 2nd floor. Time limit 23 days. Compensation 50,000 coins. Failure. The demon servants were so powerful that the scenario was a bit tricky, but it was possible to clear if the incarnations cooperated. The major forces had already moved to the 2nd floor. She might be a ranker, but she might be overtaken by the other rankers. The Dark Castle compensation was excellent, meaning the ranking would change if she delayed even a little bit. What should I do? At this time, a group of people on the other side of the corridor caught her attention. Han Soo-young thought this was better. She could take the proofs from these guys. Han Soo-young SSI. Han Soo-young saw their faces and sighed. What the hell is this? Someone cried out. Han Soo-young replied, I was just fighting the demon servants and was hurt. Lee Hyun-sung SSI also entered the maze. That's correct, are you all right? He was the genuine steel Lee Hyun-sung. Why did this guy appear here? Kim Dokja's companion, Lee Hyun-sung, also came here. No matter how urgent the situation, she couldn't take away the proofs of the main characters. Lee Hyun-sung SSI, don't go over. The shrill shout came from a beautiful face. The 4 people who appeared with Lee Hyun-sung weren't anyone Han Soo-young knew. The woman once again shouted, Lee Hyun-sung SSI, can't you hear my words? It might be a trap. That's right, back off, come over here. But Lee Hyun-sung was confused as he looked between Han Soo-young and the women. Han Soo-young spoke to Lee Hyun-sung. Has your party changed? Why are you building a harem all of a sudden? I split up from the party in the labyrinth. Lee Hyun-sung looked troubled, and the other women rushed at him and pulled at his arms. Why are you listening to that person? Those wounds don't come from fighting with demon servants. That woman is suspicious. That's right. Hyun-sung SSI is too naive. You shouldn't trust anyone in this world. Lee Hyun-sung was pulled back by the women with much difficulty. Han Soo-young triggered Detect Attributes. The next moment, a cruel smile appeared on Han Soo-young's face as she saw the names in front of her eyes. What am I seeing? It is them. The way that people adapted to a destroyed world were different. There were women who believed in themselves like Jung Hee-won and Lee Ji-hai, while other women took advantage of others. The even more interesting way. Lee Hyun-sung, I didn't realize that you have an unusual taste. Huh? Don't you know they're all men? A constellation who likes to change sex is surprised. The constellation in love with a woman is aghast. The women shouted in astonishment at Han Soo-young's words. What are you talking about right now? Don't frame us. It was impossible to think these people were men. However, Han Soo-young knew them. They were a group of 4 who used disguise and forbidden charm to kill strong rankers or the weak. Han Soo-young remembered the name of this group. Pink Kids. They had the name of a girl group, but they were all men in their 40s. She spoke to them. Hey Justice, do you like disguising as young girls? Lee Hyun-sung SSI, if you stay with them, you will be tricked and killed. What is this crazy bitch saying? Hyun-sung SSI, let's go. She is a strange person. Sometimes it was common in ways of survival to dress up as the other gender. There were more villains in this world than pink kids. Thus, these men could be rehabilitated. Kim Dokja might have said this. Han Soo-young was different from Kim Dokja. I have to get rid of these disgusting things. At this rate, Lee Hyun-sung would 100% be hit in the back of the head by pink kids. His death would have a severe impact on the scenarios. A large number of clones started to surround Han Soo-young's body. Lee Hyun-sung hastily came forward. What are you doing? She demanded, get lost, I'm going to kill them. They aren't bad people. Lee Hyun-sung didn't move out of the way. He didn't seem bewitched, but he stood firmly in place. If she thought about it, this was Lee Hyun-sung. The pink kids watched Lee Hyun-sung with touched eyes. Han Soo-young cried out in an irritated manner, I will kill you if you don't get out of the way. Han Soo-young SSI, I'm aware that you are strong, but please calm yourself. I'm also confident in my strength. Then try it. The clones ran towards Lee Hyun-sung, while Han Soo-young rushed towards the pink kids. Die perverts. You can't do this. Kayak, help us Hyun-sung SSI. Lee Hyun-sung triggered steel transformation and started to kill Han Soo-young's clones with tremendous strength. Han Soo-young couldn't help sweating at the enormous damage. He truly is the steel sword. She noticed that the pink kids were planning to run away. At this rate, she would miss this. There was nothing good about leaving them alive when she had already made a hostile impression. I will do it. She was forced to use a secret weapon. Han Soo-young smiled bitterly at Lee Hyun-sung. Do you want to see a good show? The next moment, Han Soo-young's clones surrounding Lee Hyun-sung took off their clothes. Her white skin was revealed. Lee Hyun-sung blushed as he covered his eyes and collapsed. Waron, what is this? Han Soo-young stepped on Lee Hyun-sung's body and flew forward. It is a naked woman. Han Soo-young flew through the air and aimed her dagger at the back of the pink kids running away. What are you? Kyuag. Yoon Woo-chul, 41 years old, operated a coin farm. The other member of Pink Kids screamed as he saw his dying companion. Shit, we haven't done anything wrong. Hwang Minju, 43 years old, trafficking and what was it? Her dagger sliced over his neck. The pink Kayid's transformation was released, revealing hairy legs. Spare me, spare me. Bang Taco, 39 years old, the children in the third episode anyway. In any instant, only one of the pink kids was left. Han Soo-young frowned as she saw the middle-aged person trembling with fear. What did this person do? Han Soo-young wondered for a moment, and was about to kill the last pink kids when magic power flew from somewhere and blocked her dagger. Then a clear voice was heard. You made a mistake. What? You shouldn't kill this person. He is needed for my strategy. She turned her head and sighed with relief. Han Soo-young laughed. You are late, Kim Dokja. Chapter 154, Dark Castle 4. Han Soo-young heard my story and muttered in a dumbfounded manner. Did you really become a constellation? A person who was an incarnation a few days ago suddenly appeared as a constellation. Certainly, it was strange. Han Soo-young hadn't read anything about an incarnation being reborn as a constellation. Yes, I'm a constellation. Really, seriously? That's right. Han Soo-young's eyes were filled with disbelief. Is it that easy? I wanted to say it wasn't easy, but Han Soo-young didn't listen. Shit, will you now be watching us outside the scenario and sponsoring us? Nothing like that. I became a constellation in the course of the scenario, so I have to keep participating in the scenario. What's the difference? I can't tell at all. In fact, I didn't feel it was real either. Borrowing stories, trading with other constellations and nebulae, changing the attitude of the constellations towards me. Some constellations are jealous of your growth. Some constellations oppose you having a modifier. Some constellations show hostility towards you. In any case, the constellations also felt the ugliness of jealousy. Why were they so harsh towards a growing bud? Still, there was something I could do now. You stare at the other constellations. Some constellations are staring at you with amazement. Some constellations have spat out the coke they are drinking with surprise. 200 coins have been consumed to send an indirect message. As expected, indirect messages cost coins. It was fun, but I had to use it in moderation. Han Soo-young was staring at me with an open mouth. Was it you who just sent the message? The constellation who doesn't yet have a name. That was what it looked like to Han Soo-young. Yes. Is it because you haven't signed a sponsor contract until now? Yes. Then is it already too late for me? You could say that. Han Soo-young frowned and looked up at the air. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, hesitantly reads her face. Han Soo-young sighed and glanced at me. Shit, I'm envious. By the way, why don't you have a modifier? That. Why didn't I have a modifier? The correct answer was that I didn't know. The star stream is looking for a modifier for your constellation. Perhaps it was because I haven't accumulated enough stories. A constellation without a modifier was similar to gaining a citizenship without having a home. Han Soo-young muttered, you are a vagabond. The fifth story isn't over yet. Maybe I will have a modifier by the time this story is finalized. The fifth story, Lone Messiah, is currently in progress. The fifth story was a story that greatly affected the status of the constellation. The position of my constellation would depend on how this story was finalized. Maybe. Then Han Soo-young booed. Boo Kim Dokja, why you suddenly look cool. Then can you beat Yu Jong-hyuk? Yu Jong-hyuk. I clenched my fist and opened it. Then there was a message I had never seen before. Beware of the probability storm effect. The star stream is currently evaluating your level. There was a prickly feeling at the tips of my fingers. This was a problem for constellations. Still, I would be fine as long as the evaluation was in progress. The star stream didn't know the right level of constraints for me yet. I might be able to win against him now. Really? The point was the word now. The protagonist was the protagonist for a reason. I could only match his growth by becoming a constellation. The perks that Yu Jong-hyuk received were huge. I ordered her, quickly return what I gave you. Gee, I understand. The incarnation, Han Suyong, has fulfilled the contract. I received all the coins and items I had left with Han Suyong. Han Suyong sighed. It's too bad. I felt rich for a while. I gave you 20,000 coins for the trouble. I handed over 600,000 coins, but only got 20,000 in return. Then you can give back the 20,000 coins. Han Suyong scoffed and turned her back to me. I received my items and coins from Han Suyong. Possessed coins, 684,353 C. In the meantime, I had collected a lot of money. It wasn't strange since I made a steady income and saved money. Now that I was a constellation, I no longer hesitated in using coins. The coins would exert their real strength from now on. Then little by little, wait, I forgot an important thing. Han Suyong, when will you release that? It is sexual harassment. I forgot. Han Suyong smiled, and I approached Lee Hyun-sung, who was sitting on the floor holding his head in his hands. Han Suyong's clones were still dancing naked around Lee Hyun-sung. The character Lee Hyun-sung is shaking with fear. The steel sword is weak to women. There was such a sentence in Ways of Survival, but I hadn't thought it was so severe. Besides that, it isn't real. Han Suyong's clones looked naked, but they didn't have the important parts. In other words, Lee Hyun-sung had become like this because he saw mannequins. Han Suyong noticed the meaning of my words and laughed mischievously. HRMM, what does that mean? You are sorry because you didn't get to see them. I told you, I don't like a poor body like yours. You haven't even seen it. Do I need to see it? I approached Lee Hyun-sung and patted him on the back. Hyun-sung SSI, are you okay? Dr. SSI. He looked stupid, but he wasn't crazy. Lee Hyun-sung looked at me like he had seen a ghost. Why is Dr. SSI, you are dead? I think he got a real trauma. I looked at Han Suyong with annoyance. It was a comic-like situation, but it would have been a serious blow for the steel sword. If I did something wrong in this round, Lee Hyun-sung might step on an unknown route. For the moment, I had to rely on time for him to recover. Then another voice was heard from the side. Excuse me. Can I go? The last member of Pink Kids entered my eyes. She had a pretty face and slender body. She had fine eyebrows and tender cheeks. Who would believe this person was an uncle in his 40s? What is your name? I asked, and a pretty voice answered. Seo In-na. That's not his real name. Seo In-na hesitated before speaking his true name. I am Kim Yompol. Pink Kids, Kim Yompol. I found the right person. Han Suyong clicked her tongue. Why are you keeping him alive? Aren't the Pink Kids scum? Not yet. They will become bad guys. If you read it correctly, you should know that the Pink Kids was originally a trio. But there are 4A. I explained. This uncle died before they became really active. Is that why I couldn't remember him? Kim Yompol is basically a pure person. Thus, he was the first to die in Pink Kids. Kim Yompol interrupted. Excuse me, what are you talking about? Shut up. Han Suyong frowned at him. This is a pure person. Yes. I also couldn't believe it, but it was a setting in Ways of Survival. A constellations who likes to change sex is nodding. A constellation who likes to change sex claims. There are no bad people among those who like to change sex. In fact, Kim Yompol survived to this day without killing anyone, even in the first scenario. I could come up with the insect killing method in the first scenario because there was a precedent where Kim Yompol stepped on an ant by mistake and survived. Of course, Kim Yompol didn't know why he had survived. He was a person who, fortunately, survived. This was Kim Yompol of Pink Kids. No, I should call it Pink Kid now that his companions were dead. Han Suyong muttered like she didn't want to admit it. Damn, so what? In any case, you saved him because there is a use for him. Yes. Then now what? We have to break the scenario again. Do you know that this scenario is? Of course I knew it very well. It is the last scenario before the liberation of Seoul Dome. The 9th scenario, Dark Castle. In this scenario, beings that had never appeared before emerged. I watched Lee Hyun-sung, who was still trembling with fear, the unconscious Lee Ji-hai and Shin Yu-sung who was caring for the injured Lee Gil-young. Maybe my other companions were alive somewhere. There was Jung Hee-won so they wouldn't be defeated so easily on the first floor. The first floor is just a joke. The real hell is the second floor. A special window in the castle showed the outside landscape. Crowds were moving around Seoul. Unfortunately, in the absence of the greatest sacrifice and the ensuing struggle, half of Seoul had become demon servants. The incarnations of Seoul were shouting sorrowfully. Despair already covered Seoul, but the story was still lacking. The story was always lacking. The Dakibus were seeking larger frustration. The constellations were yearning for more provocative story. Han Soo-young stared out the window and spoke. It is a cliché imagination. Regressors, returnees, reincarnators. Now there are demons. A person who plagiarized is saying this. Hey, I told you a couple of times. I was joking as usual when I suddenly became curious. Han Soo-young. What is it? If you are the writer of Ways of Survival. I didn't write that garbage. Let's just assume. The grumpy Han Soo-young bit her lips. If I am the writer. If you are the writer of Ways of Survival, why did you make this world? How should I know? You are also writer. How can a first-rate writer like me know the thoughts of a third-rate writer? I was an idiot for asking her. Han Soo-young continued speaking. I should be the one asking you that. What? I met Han Soo-young's deep eyes. I couldn't read Han Soo-young even if I used Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Still, I seemed to understand a bit. A person who read the story might have similar thoughts. You know the end of this world, isn't that right? Han Soo-young was obviously asking this. As always, I didn't answer. Han Soo-young stared out the window like she knew she wouldn't receive an answer. Then she asked another question. Why do the scenarios exist? I stared out the window. The dark sky above the destroyed soul could be seen. Was it because I had become a constellation? The sky wasn't the same as before. Countless constellations were embroidering the sky. The star stream was embracing the constellations. They were stars that could never be reached despite being so close. Even with so many stars shining. There was the distant abyss that couldn't be erased. I felt like I had discovered something. What were the constellations always enduring? Why were they so obsessed with the story? I shook off this distant emotion and opened my mouth. Perhaps the scenario. Chapter 155, Dark Castle 5. This was a question that had been countless beings in the star stream received over many years. Why the hell does the scenario exist? The answers to this question were different. For example, the returnee Kyogyo's Rodgram said, without it, the universe would be too lonely. The constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, replied to the same question. Are you asking me why food exists? The demon king Asmodeus' reply to the same question was as followed. It is a small destruction to prevent greater destruction. The answers might be romantic or philosophical to people who heard it. However, romantic and philosophical were only luxuries for those who were full in the first place. Therefore, to the demon Earl Tentasio on the second floor of Dark Castle, the scenario meant the following. It is fucked up. This was his way of speaking, although technically, they weren't his own words. Anyone who entered this space would say this after 50 years, of course, if they managed to survive 50 years. I'm tired. The river running through the Abyss Plains was a tributary of the demon world's river, Phoenix. One might ask how there was such a huge plains on the second floor of Dark Castle, but naturally Tentasio was different. There were only two things he knew. First, he had to reach the top of the vast plains, and second, he hadn't managed to do it in 194 years. Damn it, if it wasn't for that Dakibai's offer at the time. The memories from 194 years ago were still vivid. You want to become the 73rd Demon King. Demon King, it was the long-cherished dream of all demons. Can I become the Demon King? He had asked. He was a third-grade demon and still far from rising to that status. It was hard to climb up, no matter how many low-grade demons he ate. During that period, Tentasio was tempted by a being more demonic than a great demon. Are lacking a story, not strength. What does that mean? We'll find out if you participate in the scenario. Thus, Tentasio was put into the Dark Castle scenario. He tore down many demons and slaughtered the races that came up from the first floor of Dark Castle. After 194 years, Tentasio had become one of the 10 strongest demons on the Dark Castle's second floor. However, it was up to here. I can't go up to the third floor. The Dark Castle's third floor. This was where the essence of a demon king was sleeping. In order to get there, he had to beat the strongest beings on the second floor. However, raising strength and coins wasn't enough. The best beings on the second floor weren't the strongest simply because of strength, the thing Tentasio was lacking. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep wants to talk to you alone. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep is curious about your setting. Setting, fucking bastards, I know what I'm made of. He didn't like constellations, but it was pleasant to see a constellation wondering about him. The constellation wondering about him meant new people were coming from the first floor of Dark Castle. It meant the enjoyable game would start from now on. A group of men and women appeared. Tentasio smiled at the sight. Welcome, you bugs. This is the second floor of Dark Castle. Tentasio enjoyed speaking the lines of an ambassador like it was a habit. As expected, some of the bugs came forward and asked him, "What is this place? Who are you, a guide? Are you perhaps a Dakibai?" Dakibai, they were existences that Tentasio hated the most. Still, he endured it and opened his mouth. There would be a time of sweet rewards after the patience. The second floor of Dark Castle is a world of survival of the fittest. Only those who have their strength acknowledged can move to the next floor. Isn't it a simple rule? Raise your hands if you need further explanations. What does it mean to have your strength acknowledged? How do we? By doing this. Tentasio's arm stretched out and the head of the speaking man literally exploded. The bugs had frightened expressions. This was Tentasio's favorite moment. What? Shit, it is a trap. Tentasio laughed and licked the blood that splattered from the man's neck. Protect the queen. All the incarnations rushed towards him, but Tentasio didn't mind. A strong energy rose from his body. The demon nobility went from Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, and Baron. The Viscount and Baron graders were fairly common, but the difference started from the Earl grade. Demons from the Earl grade had a story. A story, it only opened when specific situations occurred. The story Bug Slaughter has begun. Quack. Every time his hands moved, the humans died like bugs. This story was obtained by slaughtering hundreds of thousands of players in 194 years. It showed overwhelming power against those who were lower than him. The constellation Lady of the Brocade Sleep is surprised. Kuhahata. The surrounding incarnations quickly became corpses or were wounded. It is too dull. Some incarnations seemed useful, but more of them were garbage. At most, they could be transformed into fifth-grade demons. Then Tentasio's gaze stopped on someone. "Ho, you will be fourth grade." Tentasio grabbed the neck of a woman and lifted her up. The hair of the woman scattered. A broken crown rolled around. She was the king of beauty, Min Ji-1. Tentasio opened his mouth. "You must be the leader of these guys." He liked her strong gaze. This woman's story must be quite delicious. "I will ask you two things. Where do you come from?" Telling you something like that. "I've seen many bugs like you." Tentasio made a cruel smile and trampled on one of the H-Warang. Min Ji-1 paled as she looked at the broken skull and brain matter. Wait a minute. Piok. Stop, Earth, we are from Earth. Tentasio laughed. Earth. Tentasio remembered it as a planet full of rich stories. The Demon Kings. Earth is like a cradle for stories like that. There were many prey in a place abundant with stories. Tentasio licked his lips. Bug, who has the most stories among you? You stories, what is that? As expected, she didn't understand him. Who is the strongest among you? Minjiwan shook as Tentasio's yellow eyes gazed greedily at her. Ah, then what is the scenario? I just told you. How can I understand those symbolic words? I moved with Han Suyong towards the altar for the second floor. We encountered a few demons on the way. Needless to say, our progress was smooth. It was because I used the status of a constellation whenever I saw a demon. Kia. The dark trackers who encountered my eyes screamed and trembled. I might not be a narrative or upper grade level, but once I became a constellation, my presence itself was different. In other words, I could exercise considerable influence over those lower than me with just a glance or remark. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is disappointed in the too easy progress. The constellation, scribe of heaven, says you need greater adversity. It was a sweet potato when difficult but boring when it was easy. I didn't know which one to cater to. Shouldn't there be days like this sometimes? It was the first time a scenario was easy. I was collecting the demon proofs one by one when a familiar voice was heard in the air. Kim Daksha, don't you look good? Did you open the Dakibai bag alone? I could tell straight away who was speaking, grunted and sent back a message. Was the one who suddenly disappeared. It was an intermediate Dakibai. Who has a big head now? I couldn't come because I was busy. In any case, it is late, but congratulations. A new constellation emerged from my channel. It is very emotional. The channel running well. Yes, I thought the incarnation seekers would leave after you became a constellation, but it actually became better. Everyone has come to watch the castle scenario, so it is hectic right now. We might have to expand the channel soon. That much, indeed. It was rare for an incarnation to become a constellation during the scenario. However, there are some who dislike you. You should be careful. Honestly, you are a constellation, but your status isn't completely established. It was as Bihyung said. I was a constellation, but my stigma hadn't woken up yet. In other words, I was currently more like a half constellation. I heard you are stronger than you Jonghyuk, but honestly. Stronger? Oh, Kim Dokja, isn't this different from your usual reaction? Do you feel a sense of rivalry? A constellation. He is an incarnation. It is natural for me to be stronger. HRMM, is it really like that? What are you trying to say? Did you come for a fight? I think the child will be born soon. I need a story to feed her. You are her father and should play the role of a parent. I understand. I'll get it for you. Brat, I like you because you understand quickly. Then I'm asking you. It was almost time for the 41st regression Shin Yusung to wake up. I looked back and saw the party members collecting demon proofs from the bodies of the demons. Does everyone have enough proofs? Shin Yusung carefully raised her hand. I'm still lacking, Gileung also. I can help. She seemed like she would be annoyed, but surprisingly, Han Suyong took good care of Shin Yusung. Lee Hyun-sung was carrying Lee Gileung on his back and spoke to me. D. Dokja Sasai. Yes. Can I ask you something? What is it? Lee Hyun-sung had barely escaped from Han Suyong's nightmare, and he still seemed unable to believe I had survived. Sometimes he would grab my arm or my head. Lee Hyun-sung touched my head and then opened his mouth. In the past, I lost an empty cartridge in the army. That must be a big problem. Did you find it again? I found it. You must have been in trouble. Why are you saying this? It was found out of the blue 1 month later. Despite my confused expression, Lee Hyun-sung still looked serious. From then on, I kept the empty shell in my pocket. Isn't that a violation of military rule? That's right. I was amazed that he nodded so casually. I nodded curiously. I see. But why all of a sudden? No, I was suddenly reminded of the past. I looked at him and didn't know why he was saying this. Surely he didn't mean to cut off my head and put it in his pocket in any case. It meant he was glad I was alive. We soon reached the altar that would lead to the second floor. We had enough demon proofs, and the only thing left was to place it on the altar and wait. At this time, Han Soo-young asked, "Is that Ajasi coming with us?" I turned and saw she was pointed to the pink kid Kim Yompal. I nodded and ordered, "Kim Yompal SSI, lead the way." Huh. Kim Yompal freaked out while Han Soo-young's eyes narrowed. "What is that Ajasi for?" "Have you forgotten? The last gateway to the second floor. Those who collected the demon proofs on the first floor could only go up the next floor if they hunted the demon, summoned after placing the proofs on the altar. However, the demon summoned from the second floor was based on the level of the weakest person in the party." Han Soo-young nodded like she understood. "Aha, that's why you're putting the weakest person in the lead." "Exactly. Kim Dokja is the best at being shameless." "It isn't being shameless but strategic. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is amazed at your awkwardness. The constellation, bald general of justice, wants you to show the dignity of a constellation." What was dignity of a constellation? I didn't make it through difficult scenarios by focusing on my dignity. I was a constellation, but sometimes I needed to play it smart. Han Soo-young said, "Then this gateway will be easily passed. As long as nothing happens." "What can happen?" "Sometimes a demon will be summoned regardless of our level." I placed the demon proofs on the altar as I said this. "The demon proofs have been placed. A demon appropriate to test you will be summoned." There was a blinding light from the altar, and the demon started to be summoned. A colorful spotlight shone. If my prediction was correct, someone on the level of Kim Yompal would come out. Maybe it was Demon Baron Viller, the weakest of the demon nobles on the second floor. I would be able to suppress him without even using the power of a constellation. "The demon who wants you is on the second floor. A demon unrelated to your level will be summoned." Han Soo-young stiffened as she heard the messages. "Shit, what is this? Is this what you were talking about?" "Demon Earl Tentasio has descended." "Earl." Majestic horns rose over the shoulders. The demon who appeared in the colorful spotlight was a powerful existence whom Viller couldn't compare to. A cruel smile was on his face as he opened his mouth. "I see. Are you Yu Jong-hyuk?"